Yudhishthira, I can't hear you, neither can Mary. All of a sudden we lost your audio.
There
There
was
it
a
is.
there was a reason for that. Thank you. So what I was saying is that my friend Dabara had a simple teaching, which is that any meditation is better than no meditation at all. So if I have 5 minutes and I want to use that 5 minutes productively, I can sit and do a few kriyas or a few rounds of Hong Sa, and then sit just for a minute, in silence, being inwardly focused. So, it's really not all that complicated, this matter of meditating. Um, in our yoga in the 12 steps class, in which Billy and Mary are both part of that, um, we take the individual steps of the 12 steps and pair them up with a yama and niyama, or yama or niyama, and then a principle that sort of bridges the gap between the step and the yoga practice. And the principle this week is intimacy. Intimacy is give it some thought. What is true intimacy? And in our Western culture, where everything is so physically identified, materially focused, we think of intimacy in terms of a physical connection, which it certainly can be. But the true intimacy is the ability to allow yourself to be seen by yourself and others. And in terms of practices, it is about purity, or Saucha. That's the yoga principle. Saucha, S-A-U-C-H-A, is usually the one-word English definition for Saucha is purity or cleanliness. And neither of those words really does Saucha justice. But I made the point in writing last night that one cannot practice Saucha, or cleanliness of heart and mind, successfully by itself. It just doesn't work. You need to bring in other practices as well. One of which is swadhyaya. Swa means self, daya, to contemplate. And so if you practice swadhyaya and Saucha, it brings you immediately into another practice. So if I'm going to turn my attention inward, observe what I find, that practice in itself will be purifying unless I become judgmental of myself. And so notice the tendency that you have to be forgiving to others. I suspect this is true for most of us. Forgiving of others, but harsh and judgmental to yourself. So in practicing this inwardly focused practice, if you have 5 minutes to meditate for 3 minutes using a technique. Take another minute or two to simply rest in the silence, and don't judge yourself along the way in any negative way for, oh, I should have meditated longer. Well, that thought immediately undermines the value of the meditation that you did get. So as we practice today, let's start with this reading from the Yogananda Spiritual Diary. This is an SRF publication. It's so worth getting. And this is on the quality of happiness. And so Yogananda, Master, writes, "A strong determination to be happy will help you. Do not wait for circumstances to change, thinking falsely that in them lies the trouble. Do not make unhappiness a chronic habit, thereby affecting yourself and your associates. It is blessedness for yourself and others if you are happy. If you possess happiness, you possess everything. To be happy is to be in tune with God. That power to be happy comes through meditation." That is from Yogananda's The Law of Success. So that power to be happy comes through meditation. When people first step onto the path of yoga, there is no possible way. I mean, people learn how to meditate. They learn a technique. And it's not just within Ananda at all. It's any teacher, any technique that you learn, there's a period of time in which we have to obviously focus on the technique. But the technique is not the meditation. So learning to use the technique that you've learned and to use it skillfully and powerfully is a great blessing. And it's impossible to tell someone who's new on this spiritual path that certain things are going to happen if you meditate daily. You can't promise that this thing and that thing and this thing and that thing are going to change, but you do know that change is going to take place. We tend to be happier under more circumstances because we are meditating regularly. We tend to be calmer. We tend to be less reactive simply because we are meditating regularly. And the longer you meditate and meditate with happiness, the deeper and the more fulfilling the sort of the fringe benefits, if you like, will be. So let's just go ahead and begin here with the simple practice of, first of all, breathing well. So that might begin with your posture, sitting upright. And then you can begin to observe the breath, and it honestly does not matter, in my experience, whether you focus on the physical breath, the air flowing through you, or even if you go deep into the astral spine and follow the pathway of the chakras up and down, any of those will work. Just notice your breath. So let's go ahead and take about a minute just to notice the breath. And you can make fine-tuning, fine attunements. You can fine-tune along the way as you go. And that is to say that you can make sure your body is relaxed. You can bring your attention back again and again to watching only the breath. And the result of that is going to be that you will automatically use your God-given power to work cooperatively with the energy flowing through you and to, in fact, modify that energy to increase its flow and to decrease tension. So watch the breath in any way. Just in the watching of it, it will change. This is one of the basic sort of overlapping principles of consciousness and quantum mechanics or quantum physics, that an observer exerts an influence over what is happening. You may not be able to predict exactly what that influence will be, but an influence will occur. You can't tell what the fruits of your meditation practice will be, but you can rest assured that there will be fruits from meditating regularly. So watch the breath. Notice that in turning your attention to the breath, probably the length of the breath will change. And the space between the breaths, every exhalation, will become naturally longer and more easeful. Now the transition towards meditation, I say moving in the direction of meditation, takes place oftentimes when we begin to use a mantra or some other technique. In Kriya Yoga, it is a particular pranayama in the deep spine. In the Hong Sa, it is simply the pairing of the mantra Hong on the inhaling breath saw on the exhaling breath, followed by the natural pause. And the real skill that we're cultivating here is not one of meditating so much as it is just letting go. And this ability in meditation to become skillful at letting the breath flow rather than influencing it has, it itself expands into a life practice. Where instead of having to respond or react to what others say or do, we oftentimes are able to simply take a pause, stop, breathe, notice that tendency you have, and then choose whether it's the right one or not. That is no small skill to possess in this lifetime. So turn your attention now as you watch the breath to using some form of mantra, or if you are a Kriya Ban, you could go ahead and do a few Kriya breaths right now. Say that in the practice of Saucha, one could say purification, that this practice of meditation is in itself purifying. The practice of pranayama is itself purifying. It removes the things that are not true to our nature, tension, worry, anxiety, being scattered in our thinking. It removes these things and instead replaces them with the sense of being still and centered, being internally focused, and observing the truth of who we are. And the truth of who we are is always going to be expressed in some aspect of the divine. And while happiness is not one of those 8 aspects, it is nonetheless a great convenient practice to be happy. Because then the other qualities that are true to our nature, joy, peace, love, light, and so on, will naturally emerge. They rise to the surface like oil on water. Now go ahead and pause whatever technique you were using, if you were using one. And just return to holding your attention to the point between the eyebrows. Again, this practice, as simple as it is, can oftentimes be used to dynamically shift your attitude and your energy in the midst of other activities. Turn your attention to the point between the eyebrows and immediately we become inwardly focused and less reactive. Now, as you remain inwardly focused, let's set the tone for our practice today, for our sadhana, in this reading from Affirmations for Self-Healing. And the quality I'll be reading about is courage. Swami Kriyananda writes that there are 3 kinds of human courage: blind, passive, and dynamic. Blind courage doesn't count the cost until it finds itself faced, horror-stricken, with a bill. Passive courage is the strength of will to adjust to reality, whatever it may be. And dynamic courage is the strength of will not only to accept reality, but to confront it with another reality of one's own making. Swami Kriyananda goes on to write that there is a 4th kind of courage, not human but divine. Divine courage comes from living in the awareness of God's presence within. and in the realization that he is the sole reality. Live more in him, for nothing and no one can touch what you really are. So let's signal this transition from our centering and meditating in the beginning to get our sadhana going. Let's signal to ourselves and to the universe that we are now going to transition. So rubbing your hands together. In yoga, nothing happens at just one level. Here we are rubbing our physical hands together, but something is happening also at the level of energy and consciousness. So taking your hands, now warm by rubbing them together, let's chant Om 3 times. Om. 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 Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Now, at times we are all teachers. At times we are all students. And one of the truths for teachers is that when you truly know something well enough to teach it, you can put it into words that are relatively simple and concise. And what I just read from Swami Kriyananda on the quality of courage is actually a good example. In 2 paragraphs, how many sentences? 6, 8, 10 sentences at the most. He brought together a lot of content on the quality of courage. And the same is true of any practice. For example, in chanting Om, when we truly understand what we're doing, and it always begins, by the way, with just, I have no idea what I'm doing, but others are doing it, so I'm going to rub my hands together and I'm going to chant Om. But through the practice of doing it, we find our way into a deeper understanding of what's really taking place. Not because we've read something or someone else has told us about it, but because we have an experience, that there is another level of what I'm experiencing. It's not rubbing my hands, it's not using my voice, there's something else going on. Can I put that into words? And can I make that simple? And of course, you don't need to do it to someone else. You can work with it in yourself. It actually becomes working on oneself. So let's go ahead and begin our physical practice here. We'll do a little bit of warming up right where we are. I actually enjoy warming up from this place first, then we'll come down to the ground and we'll go on from there. Again, as I mentioned earlier, please, if you need padding for your knees, make sure that you have those available. Most of you were in Ananda Scotts Valley when it was still open, and I always had those little 1-inch foam pads around. They're called yoga bricks. I don't know why, but they come in that 1-inch thick, and they don't throw your hips off much, but they really provide a lot of padding. I have some around, I need to locate them. So let's go ahead and begin right where we are, and then we'll come down onto the floor. So let's go ahead and bring our hands to our hearts, expand our hearts open. And as I mentioned, things are going on at different levels. Whatever we do with our physical body is an extension of an energy body in movement, or energy moving of its own. And there's also this awareness that is behind the physical movement and the energy movement, that awareness. And by the way, you can oftentimes locate, where am I aware from? And you'll usually land back here at the base of the skull at the medulla. But through practice and willpower, you can bring that energy, that awareness forward to the point between the eyebrows. So as we inhale and expand, hold your attention at the point between the eyebrows. You'll be aware of all that's going on. Your body, the energy, the breath. What you'll be doing is sort of like an observer. We've all seen images, or perhaps you've even been in the elevated towers where people watch for signs of forest fires. So they're up high, they're in a platform, they can see a long distance. And that's very much like what we are doing. We are viewing what's going on from a distance and an elevation that allows us to see everything dispassionately and to feel this expansiveness of the view. Here's the view from our heart. Good. Let's bring our hands back to the heart and do a circle of joy. Remember that joy is not something to be achieved, it is something to be practiced. So feel that every movement expresses joy. Hands forward, inhaling arms up, exhaling arms down, around and behind. Straightening elbows out, squeeze shoulder blades together. Now I have my fingers interlaced and resting on the pillow behind me, which is just right. So you could even put a block back there if you wanted to rest your hands on. It just gives you one more point of contact with the earth, through your hips, through your knees, through your feet, and now through your hands. And on exhaling breath, turn palms up and bring hands back to the heart. We'll do more of that when we come up to standing. For now, let's go ahead and bring the right hand beside us. Inhale, left arm up, and just flow. Please don't feel like you need to follow me, but rather see if you can close your eyes and let your breath lead the way. So as the breath enters, the body follows, and that you in that place of observation are observing all this going on. If you read the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, which I strongly encourage you to do, it's available on audiobook as well. One of the unique qualities of Yogananda's interpretations of that scripture is the idea that we are each royalty, kings and queens of our kingdom. And every cell in our body, every cell in our mind is an occupant of that kingdom, and it is ours to command. And yet most of the time, of course, goes unnoticed because we are outwardly focused. So our sadhana is to a large degree the way in which we are connected to the higher truth of our existence. And it's practiced in small ways, just a minute or two of meditation, just an asana or two of yoga postures, just a remembrance of the practice of ahimsa, so that when we do turn our attention inward, that the result is that we are purified, not finding ourselves lacking or in need of something at all, but rather in possession of all that we need. Go ahead and turn palms up. I encourage you to now for another breath or two, or maybe even as long as a minute of breathing, to turn your attention back to watching the breath, any version of the breath. And if you have the option, by the way, take it deep. Go to the core of the body. Practice within the core, within the pathway of the Sushumna. The Sushumna is the principal energy pathway, or nadi, N-A-D-I. Good, now let's go ahead and continue our physical practice, extending legs out into a wide V. And I'm sliding just to the very edge of my pillow. And that does a good job of letting my sit bones shift towards the floor while my tailbone is still on the pillow. And so let's go ahead and do our small rotations here, gradually increasing their size, and just in this way very gently giving our first stretch to the back of the legs. In our physical practice, this is one way to make sure that you're caring for your lower back. Just being non-violent in your use of your physical body. Next time you come to your right, let's go ahead and pause. Grab an ankle or a shin or a toe. Bring the left arm up and over. Good, let's inhale up. And now we're going to go in the other direction. So small circles gradually increasing in size. And so your hands move more until the circle is as big as you can make it. Remember to keep the pelvic floor and core of the navel center engaged, or the abdominal core engaged, to keep the lower back supported. And then grasping with your left hand, bringing the right arm up. If you like, you can rest the entire forearm along the lower leg so your elbow and knee are touching. If you like, you can rotate your heart open and up. And once you're in the stretch that you want, breathe into the resistance and feel it diminish. I can tell you about this, but better for you to experience it. It is in the experience that yoga takes place. Good. Inhaling the right arm up, exhaling down. So we're going to go ahead and make our way onto our back. And have your strap nearby, please. We'll come into constructive rest position, which means that, of course, that you're going to be on your back with knees bent and feet flat to the floor. In your own in your own practice at this moment, you could consider having a foam roller that you could use to massage the back, of course. But you can also, of course, just do it on your own through pelvic tilting. So as you press the lower back flat, tipping tailbone up and then reversing, I sometimes find that my spine just will adjust of its own accord. Bringing hands to the heart will begin to add crunching to this. All of you know how to do this well. We can, of course, extend this so that as you inhale, you extend arms above your head, feet along the floor, and as you exhale, you bring the hands between the feet, knees towards your ears, so you get a very long crunch. Good. Let's go ahead at this point and spread our arms out wide. And we're going to do a beginning twist. We'll do deeper twists in just a moment. But for right now, just keep the knees together and let your body tell you when it's time to stop. Keep your shoulder blades and shoulders and arms to the floor. Let your exhaled breath finish while your legs remain in the twist. Inhaling the center, exhaling into this very simple, very easeful twist. I say easeful. We're not pushing. We're not trying to go further. It's not even all that physically dynamic, but it's great for the lower back just to warm up in this way. I'm also noticing my head wanting to turn in the opposite direction, just a little. Kind of not forcing it. I'm not using willpower all that much. I'm just letting my body and the intelligence of my body guide itself into and out of these twisting movements. Good. Next time you come back to center, pull your knees to your chest. You can interlace your fingers, if you like, and really squeeze the thighs into the belly, and even rock from side to side. So this is Apanasana. There's a tendency whenever we compress the belly for the breath to pause or become very shallow. Try to work against that if you can. Make the breath dynamic and deep continuously, especially when there is pressure on the belly. Good. Let's go ahead now and bring our strap into play. We'll straighten our right leg out. Strap our left foot first. And we'll go into the 3 phases. So here will come a deeper twist, but right now just go ahead and push the heel towards the ceiling. Press the right leg into the floor. And focus your attention on the back of the left thigh or knee. The beginning of Kriya Yoga, the ability to consciously and intentionally accelerate your spiritual progress without the need for incarnation after incarnation. You can shorten that process, and in order to do so, one needs to learn to work directly with energy. And in the beginning, it works like what we're doing now. We begin not with the energy directly, but with the physical manifestation of trapped energy in the form of physical tension. Notice for yourself that you have the capacity to focus your attention and to feel that tension diminish. It's like melting a little bit at a time. Now, taking the strap in the left hand only, reaching the right arm out, we'll exhale the left leg open and to the side. So for deeper hip openers, you could think frog pose for one. This is a great warming up stretch. Make sure you're pulling the leg to you as well as relaxing it towards the floor. Inhale the left leg up and above you. Exchange hands, reaching the left arm out, and now we'll come into that deeper twist. The left shoulder still stays to the floor. Your head could turn to the opposite side. Don't bend your right knee. In fact, keep the right leg active, pushing through the right heel. And use your attention and willpower to dissipate the energy by use of the stretch and the breath. So there is a direct connection between this practice of yoga and the most advanced techniques of yoga. Inhaling left leg back to center. We'll exchange. Straighten the left leg out. Drive the right leg to its stopping point. There are times, and this could be one of them for you, when a more active physical engagement may help. To put that in simple words, pull the strap more actively towards you, and you'll deepen the stretch. And we're looking for that edge of where it is right for us to stop. And to have stopped before that would not have been enough. Strap in the right hand only, left arm reaching out. Exhale, the right leg open and to the side. Again, don't let your mind simply drift or go numb. Rather, turn it over and over again to the practice of watching the impact of the breath on the body while it is engaged in a stretch. This practice, again, it becomes expanded in daily life when we are always aware, as if watching from that place of elevation and a great sense of expanse. We can watch what we're doing, what we're thinking, our reactions, all continuously. Let's inhale the right leg back. Exchange hands, reaching the right arm out and coming into our twist. Good, let's inhale the right leg back to center. And let's now bend our knees. We'll come into Avanasana once again. We're about ready to come into our figure four stretch. So when you feel like Avanasana is done, and we're warming up, so feel free to move. We're taking care of our body along the way here. So if you cross left ankle over right knee, interlace hands around the right knee, press the left knee away, and press your sacrum down towards the floor. Nice, steady, probably a deep level of resistance in the left hip. And primarily we're working with the external hip rotators and the gluteal muscles as well. These are powerful big muscles. The gluteals, of course, they're a triad of muscles. And again, rotating the ankles and feet may feel good, and we actually can release trapped energy there as well. We're going to exhale as we come back into constructive rest position, recross in the opposite way and come to the other side. Once again, pressing right knee away, sacrum down. Your breath is going to need to be willful. You can make the breath more willful, that is to say, more powerful, by using Ujjayi breath. So we are focused where the stretch is most intense, right hip and thigh. We're using Ujjayi breath, and the breath becomes like a fire hose rather than like a gentle spray. Lovely. Let's come as we exhale into constructive rest position. I like knocking my knees together, feet apart, hands on the fingertips on the diaphragm. And the fingertips, by the way, are oftentimes used to give as feedback. And they're oftentimes used in mudras, for example, as a way of providing a feedback loop. Good. Last thing on our back. Well, maybe we'll do two more things. Let's do Ananda Balanasana. So reaching out, wrapping your fingers around the outside of the feet, pulling the knees towards the floor as you rock side to side. Now rocking is only optional because you could be still and just focus your attention on the inner thighs and groin. This is a pose that in order for it to have a physical benefit, you need to hold it a little longer. Keep the arms actively drawing the knees towards the floor. So that is a dynamic stretch, not passive. When you're ready, coming back to constructive rest position, align your heels with your sit bones. Bring your heels closer in to those sit bones. And we'll press our lower back into the floor. So pelvic tilt, and then we'll peel the spine off the floor. Notice that if you press to the inner part of the feet, your hips will actually come up a little bit higher, and you'll get a deeper stretch to the groin, the hip flexors, and the quads, the front of the thighs. See if you can very carefully, as you exhale, return the spine to the floor. Now on the next exhaling breath, on the inhaling breath, you arch it back up. As you exhale once again, vertebra by vertebra, you reapply the spine to the floor and then peel it up. Peel it off the floor. Come up onto the shoulders. Go ahead and on your own do a few more rounds of these bridge flows. Feel free to pause in the bridge if you like. We can even bring in as our first affirmation here, I offer my every thought as a bridge to divine grace. Again, from that place of observation of oneself. That's a practice of Swadhyaya. It is a moment-by-moment practice. Not something that is, I'm going to practice Swadhyaya for 2 or 3 minutes. No, we carry it throughout the day. And we become aware of individual thoughts. And we offer those thoughts when they are less than pure. We offer them back to the source, to the broadcasting source. Yogananda made it a point to emphasize that we do not have original thoughts, but we are more like radios that are tuned in. And so with the practice of yoga, we find that we can have control over the station that we will be attuned to or tuned into throughout the day. And when some static comes in, or a stray thought, or an overlapping broadcast from another source, we simply say, I offer my every thought as a bridge to divine grace. We don't have to be responsible for those thoughts. We can be responsible for what we do when we notice them. Good. Let's go ahead and roll to our side. Push our weight up and come over onto our hands and knees. On our hands and knees, toes turned under, of course. We can cat-cow, and I encourage you to go ahead and do a few. Coming back to neutral, bringing your knees together. We can exhale, bring knee and nose together. Inhale, extend, left leg back, gaze looks up. Please continue these flexions and extensions. I encourage you to pause at either end. Let's exhale, bringing the left knee down. Arch in the cat, in the cow. Then reverse sides and bring the right knee and nose together. Inhale. Exhale. And then bring the right knee down. Separate your knees a comfortable distance apart. We're coming into child's pose here. This is our first forward bend, other than the cat cows and crunches, but this is our first forward bend that's going to be sustained. So make sure your knees are apart enough that allows you to continue to breathe, even as your head comes to the floor or to your hands. I relax from outer involvement into my inner haven of peace. I relax from outer involvement into my inner haven of peace. As you make your way back up, we're going to come up to standing. And so if you have the option to be near a wall, if that's convenient for you, you could do it with a chair as well. But we're going to be doing a balance pose in a few, in just a bit. So when you do come up, if you have a wall nearby that you can adjust and be close to, that may be helpful to you. So when we come up standing, of course, it's Tadasana to begin with, and all of you know this practice. I stand ready to obey thy least command. So again, this points us in the direction of what am I doing throughout my day? When I am observing myself from that elevated place without criticism, without negative judgment. Positive judgment is encouraged. That's how we practice Dharma. We do the right thing at the right time. And so there's always a sense of being poised, ready, listening. I stand ready with my heart wide open to receive divine guidance in my life. When we're trying to rearrange the outer world around us and somehow, in some way, trying to find happiness, we'll find again and again that does not work. This planet is not made for that to work. It's made to help us do this. Because that we find that we cannot arrange things perfectly around us, we instead turn our attention to the perfection that is already ours within. And I stand ready to obey thy least command. So from this Tadasana position, we can move into Dirga Pranayama. So as we inhale, the arms come up. And as we exhale, we come down. I encourage you to pause this first time through. Knees bent, hands to the top of the thighs, pressing hips back and lengthening the spine. Using your hands dynamically, just as when we chanted Om in the beginning. Don't just let your hands go along for the ride. Let them become dynamically, powerfully, in an energetic fashion. use your willpower to create the image of light. Use your willpower to relax the hands and feel the energy of your body. And on a forward fold, you could hang out there if you like, bringing elbows and hands together. You might want to move your head around a little bit just to shake out any tension in your neck. And just then give yourself over to the practice of surrender. In this case, we're surrendering to the pull of gravity, but it's really a matter of practice of surrendering to a force greater than our own in order to achieve our highest goals. Nothing on earth can hold me. That is an affirmation and a statement of fact. Nothing on earth can hold me. Inhaling up. Coming through Tadasana into Hasta Uttanasana, hands above the head, long backward bend. You might be actively trying to tuck your tailbone under. When I say actively, there's energy there to support the lower back, but you're not overdoing it, because in the end this is about, can I open my heart upward? Can I open my heart upward? Inhaling back up and exhaling arms down into our side. I invite you to pause, be still. Return your attention to that core pathway if that's attractive to you, if you can do that. Perhaps you hear the affirmation flowing through your mind. So this is what we've done. We've turned the tuning of our awareness by using these affirmations. And you will continue to get that clear connection, that clear reception by returning to the affirmations and then going back into stillness. Nothing on earth can hold me, I am free. I stand ready to obey thy least command. Learn those 3 affirmations, commit them to heart, and use them throughout the day. It's just a way of reminding yourself. At times I've used a little app on my watch or my phone that, gives me a signal periodically, every 10 minutes, every half hour, every hour. And when I hear that chime go off, nothing on earth can hold me, I am free. I stand ready to obey thy least command. It just brings me back again and again to that which is centered, that which is true about myself. You've all probably witnessed the way that elephants, one of the most powerful animals on the planet, can be trained, because if an elephant is chained to a stake when it is small, and as the elephant grows, and that stake can eventually be removed, and the elephant nonetheless is bound. And in this case, the elephant is not the animal, but rather the ego. The ego can be trained. And in time, the stake can be removed and the ego remains compliant and, in fact, helpful, a useful companion. So, I mentioned balancing, so let's come into Ganapati Asana. Some of you may know this as Warrior Pose 3. And so, as we are here, we put our weight on our left leg and we hinge from the hips and the arms come up and above us. So you create this temple shape with your fingers. And I have this wall, or my door right there. And So I'm going to begin with weight on the left leg, arms above me, and I'm going to hinge from my left hip, come down, so my fingertips are to the, excuse me, my fingertips are to the wall. And it could be you don't need the wall. I find it helpful. If it's easier, you can put both hands to the wall. And here's the secret to using the wall. Instead of going down further, go up, deep in the backward bend. Point to the right toes. As I move through life, I am anchored in myself. As I move through life, I am anchored in myself. Let's inhale up. Exhale, arms down, and come back to standing mountain pose. As I move through life, I am anchored in myself. I stand ready to obey thy least command. Just for the sake of clarity, I want to say that that affirmation is not the one that is actually aligned with Ganapatyasana. It is, in fact, my soul soars through skies of inner freedom. I believe that's the actual affirmation. My soul soars through skies of inner freedom. Shifting weight to the right leg, bring the arms up. And so, again, this is very much like we have no rounding of the spine possible. You could bend the right knee a little bit as this left leg comes up and back. So either your fingertips to the wall or hands to the wall, and walk your way up. Elevate that left leg behind you. And if you don't need the wall, good for you. My soul soars through skies of inner freedom. Inhaling up, exhaling, arms around you, coming back to standing mountain pose. My soul soars through skies of inner freedom. There's a pose called pyramid pose. Let's see if I can come up with the affirmation. I'm not sure if I can. But we can do the pose one way or the other. So for pyramid pose, we're going to go ahead and walk, step our left foot backward. Now, of course, this could become a standing backward bend, Muktasana, freedom pose. But if we simply come forward, you can relax you can relax in the direction of this right leg extended forward. The knees are straight. But here's the other part of this pose. If you have the ability to bring your arms and hands behind you into this position, but between your shoulder blades, that's the actual complete pose. That doesn't work for my shoulders, and so what I can do is to bring my hands and arms together as I fold forward. If it's better for you, you can begin with your spine lengthened and neutral. And if you want to, you can relax the spine into a more rounded position. Well, let's borrow an affirmation. Left and right and all around me, life's harmonies are mine. Left and right and all around me, life's harmonies are mine. Inhaling up, releasing, stepping left foot forward, and pausing. Left and right and all around me, life's harmonies are mine. shifting the weight to the front foot, this time the left side, stepping the right leg back. Again, find the place. You could do this with your hands to your heart. But if you're going to bring the arms behind you, go ahead and find what works for you. And then spine lengthened, holding forward. And then if you're ready to relax, if it's okay for you, secure in myself, I accept whatever is. Secure in myself, I accept whatever is. Left and right and all around me, life's harmonies are mine. So what's the teaching there? Notice what's going right, not everything is going wrong. Inhaling up, exhaling arms to your side, right foot joins the left, we come back to standing mountain pose. Secure in myself, I accept whatever is. Good, so we're going to go ahead at this point. We're going to do another forward bend. This is Prasarita Padottanasana. Block may be helpful for you, so if you want to bring your block nearby, you could. Separate feet wide apart. We all know this pose, so there's not a lot of instructions really needed. Fold from the hips, lengthen the spine. Let your sit bones travel backward through space. And pause. And increasingly surrender. Physically, it means you're going to let go. You're going to let the mass of your upper body create a dynamic stretch, but your legs are also planted firmly in the earth to create a grounded experience. So feet are pushing down and apart, legs are active, but the torso is relaxed. Don't hesitate to separate feet wider apart. I relax and cast aside all mental burdens. I relax and cast aside all mental burdens. Now, if your feet have come wide apart, you might want to bring them a little bit together, bend the knees, and bring your hands up to your thighs. We're going to go ahead and come into our twist here. And I just feel like this is a good economic use of the time between the postures. These twisting movements are not postures per se, but boy, they sure feel good to my back. And then inhaling up, walking feet back and together, and coming once again to the end of the mat. We're going to do a standing backward bend. This is going to be Warrior One. So let's go ahead and come to the front of our mat. Remember in Warrior One, the foot that's in the rear, that's behind you, you're on the ball of that foot. In Muktasana, that foot is flat to the floor and the front of the foot rotated externally. So for Warrior One, we step the left foot back and we find our way onto the ball of the left foot. As we lunge through the right knee, we press back through the left heel. So there's a lot going on down below, but it's all about opening the hip flexors, about using the power of the right leg to create a good foundation, so when you sweep your arms up, I attune my will to the source of all power. So try to pull that grounded energy inward and upward into the heart. There's that attunement at the level of the heart. Be happy. Practice yoga with happiness. Be content. In yoga terms, that is the practice of santosha, contentment. When we are truly contented, there will be saucha, purity of heart. I tune my will to the source of all power. Let's hold this for a few more breaths. Challenge yourself if that's feeling good to you. Then inhale the front knee straight, exhale arms down, step forward, and into Tadasana, pause, turn your attention inward. I tune my will to the source of all power. Now shifting weight to your left foot, we'll step the right foot back, and again, find your way onto the ball of the right foot. The left knee is lunging, tailbone is tucked under, so a good foundation, and sweep arms up. I tune my will to the source of all power. Inhaling front knee, exhaling arms down, stepping right foot forward, coming back into Tadasana. So we're about ready to make our way wide-legged once again, and we're coming into extended side angle pose. So separate your feet wide apart, turn the right foot out, bend the right knee, and so there's a period of adjustment here where I get my feet the right distance apart, bringing the right elbow lightly onto the right thigh, bringing the left arm up and over. I'm a fountain of boundless energy and power. I'm a fountain of boundless energy and power. If any of you have ever been to the Olympic Plaza in Salt Lake City, it's one of those, they have these fountains. It doesn't stick up out of the ground. In fact, the jets to the fountain are at ground, flush with the ground, and yet they are connected. So the fountain, the water flows through the fountain in time with music. So it's almost like a water dance. So I always remember that image of a classical piece of music and the fountains spurting up in time with that music. And this pose is very much like that. I am a fountain of boundless energy and power. There is a music of the universe flowing through you as surely as through every other manifestation of the divine. I'm a fountain of boundless energy and power. So inhale the left arm down, bring feet back together, walk feet together, come to Tadasana. And as you find that pathway within you, again affirm, I'm a fountain of boundless energy and power. Good. So separating feet wide apart again. This time, the left foot is turning outward. Our feet are perpendicular to one another. They are, however, aligned. So the Left heel and the right inner foot is aligned. Inhaling, right arm up and over. I'm a fountain of boundless energy and power. Good. Let's inhale this right arm down, sweep it up, feet forward, and we're going to make our way first to Tadasana and then into Vajrasana. So we're going to go ahead and find our way back down to the floor into Vajrasana. Right big toe over left and palms upturned. Consider this like an intermission, if you like, in your practice, one in which you return to that original practice of perhaps a few rounds of a meditation technique. So again, if you're a Kriyaban, you can do a few Kriyas right now. And whether you are a Kriyaban or not, you can turn your attention inwardly and stay within the pathway of the spine as you inhale and exhale. So we are always working in rather than working out. We are always ready and willing to relax into stillness. So at the end of an exhaled breath, there may bloom or blossom this expanded moment of stillness. So we're going to be coming by way of a couple of other postures, plank and down dog, into pigeon pose or Rajakapotasana. The affirmation in pigeon pose is I rise above all thought of past and future into the eternal now. That affirmation is powerful, deep, has a lot that could be unpacked. I rise above all thought of past and future into the eternal now. It goes to the heart of being rather than doing. So to come into pigeon pose, we'll first come into plank, fingers spread wide. No affirmation for plank pose, but certainly the opportunity to keep your attention in the core of your body. And depending on if things are just exactly properly placed or not, you can just migrate into down dog, making adjustments if you need to. Calmness radiates from every fiber of my being. Now as you press your right heel to the floor, you can pick your left knee up. Straighten the left leg up and behind you, and then place that left leg beneath you in a pigeon pose. So left knee to left wrist, left foot moving towards the right wrist. And I always need to walk my way back a little bit to get the best stretch to the left hip. Please do not tip to the left. You're welcome to stay up on your hands with your elbows straight if you like. I encourage you to draw the releasing tension in the left hip inward and upward to the heart and allow it to expand from there on the exhalation. And then coming down onto your forearms. And I'm realizing I want to come back a little bit more. There we go. You can even bring your forehead to the floor if you like. So in the midst of this activity, Can you still affirm, I rise above all thought of past and future into the eternal now? Now, thoughts of past and future may become focused on the intensity of the stretch. When am I going to release it? How long have I been here? And see if you can turn away from that. In the midst of the stretch, it's a great practice for bringing your attention back to what's happening in the moment, turning your attention inwardly, and affirming the truth of who you are. Capable of rising, not bound by earthly experiences. I rise above all thought of past and future into the eternal now. Coming back, plank, exhaling, down dog. So down dog, we're going to actually rest in here until it's time to press the left heel down, bring the right leg into flexion, extend the right leg up and back, and then place the right leg beneath you. Don't throw it, place it, and then adjust if you need to. Remember that what you need to do may be different than what I am doing. So if you need to stay here and simply let gravity work for you, letting that right hip soften towards the earth, but not letting yourself tip to the right. And then coming down if you are going to. I rise above all thought of past and future into the eternal now. When you're ready, you can inhale your way up. Again, we'll come into plank. And down dog, just to sort of polish things off. Now inhaling, heels up, exhaling, knees down. We'll come onto our backs. We're going to flow from double spinal twist into bridge pose once again, and then Shavasana. So we're going to take just a little bit of time here. Our physical practice is just almost always going to be enhanced if we finish with a twist and an inversion. So extending legs or arms out rather, shifting hips to the right, crossing right thigh over left, rolling onto that left hip. Just a really great twist, and my back just adjusted. It felt great. Then lifting your head up and turning to the right and extending the right palm up. There's a flow. The flow is into the heart from above and below. That's the two twists. And from the heart to the hand on each exhaling breath. That's more an act of willpower. To be aware of the heart expanding as you inhale. And do your very best to take 100% of that inhaled, expanded energy and offer it back. Offer it back to Divine Mother. Offer it back to another human being. I open to this flow of divine life within me. I open to this flow of God's life within me. Head back to center. Inhale, knees back to center. Uncross. Shift hips to the left, recross, left over right. Coming into Jatara Parivartanasana, double spinal twist. And the essence of the asana is in the affirmation. So the affirmation is sort of a, what's that scroll at the bottom of the newscast? A chiron. The affirmation is like a chiron. It's always scrolling beneath the rest of the story. And the chiron, that affirmation is, I open to this flow of God's life within me. As you come back to center, again, we're just going to flow, bringing the heels close into the sit bones. And as we did at the beginning of our practice, so we'll peel the spine off the floor, but here we'll actually hold the pose, walk your shoulder blades closer to the heels, interlace your hands beneath you, and there's no weight on the head or neck. It's all on the shoulders and arms. So the head is to the floor, but it's not bearing weight. Imagine trying to touch your pubic bone to the ceiling. Try to make that happen. You'll really challenge your body to come a little bit deeper. I offer my every thought as a bridge to divine grace. Walking shoulder blades apart, coming back down. Feel free to practice Apanasana just briefly. Sort of like putting the final polish on a piece of furniture. Just to let it really shine cleanly and brightly. Then extend your legs out and come into Shavasana. Once you've physically located your body, moving shoulder blades around and such, we'll double breath in and tense. Double breath out and relax. Tense and relax. Tense and relax. The energy spine, when we're on our back, has a river-like feel to it. As a river runs through the earth, so that energy spine runs through our physical body. Shavasana is, in many regards, a more passive practice. We're observing, not doing. It's also the most challenging practice because we are relaxing, focused, and preparing to expand beyond the physical form. And none of these words that I'm using have much value except that they point you towards the experience. That you are capable of this expansion. You're capable of being in a continuous flow with Divine Mother. I open to this flow of divine life within me. And with no sudden movements, you can just gradually come back into your physical body and make your way slowly, consciously to your side. And make your way up to your seat. Let's take just a moment or two to return to whatever practice we've been doing. Again, if you have a Kriya in your toolbox, pull it out and do a few Kriya breaths. All of you have certainly Hong Sa, and if that's preferable, as it sometimes is, just follow the breath in and up using the mantra Hong Sa. Now, Kriya is an active practice, Hong Sa a bit more passive. In Hong Sa, we are allowing the breath to flow and then matching the mantra to that flow. In Kriya, we are much more in the driver's seat, as it were, and in charge of drawing this energy inward and upward. I open to this flow of God's life within me. I offer my every thought as a bridge to divine grace. I invite you to affirm with me, and if the word God is a trigger word for you, you certainly can change it by. But if it is a trigger word for you, I encourage you to work with that rather than necessarily just immediately changing the word God. Try to perhaps explore why the word God might be a trigger word for you, but that's another topic. So I invite you to affirm loudly or softly and in a whisper. I live protected by God's infinite light. So long as I remain in the heart of it, nothing and no one can harm me. A little more softly, I live protected by God's infinite light. So long as I remain in the heart of it, nothing and no one can harm me. Finally, in a whisper, I live protected by God's infinite light. So long as I remain in the heart of it, nothing and no one can harm me. Then ending as we began, rubbing your hands together, we'll seal our practice by chanting Om. 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 Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Namaste.